Good afternoon. My name is Kim Geyer, and along with my county colleague, Leslie Oshie, we have both served for the past 9 years as 2 of 3 Butler County commissioners in the fastest growing county in Pennsylvania. So welcome to the 5th annual Women Shaping Our Region, presented by Armstrong and many other local sponsors soon to be recognized. Without your generous sponsorship, today's event would not be possible, and it would not be this far reaching. I mean, look at all these amazing women in this audience. Today's forum is about empowering women, fostering leadership, cultivating mentorship, and the significance of uplifting other women. Today's event will highlight pivotal moments that have shaped our panelists' trajectories and current roles, like the discovery of how to make an impact, events that appeared as roadblocks, the search for opportunity, and unforeseen openings from relationships. Today's panel of amazing women leaders exemplifies the strength and resilience of women leaders in our Western Pennsylvania region. Their stories inspire us to break barriers, support one another, and strive for excellence in all endeavors. Today's forum aims to provide a platform for dialogue and learning, driving positive change in the southwestern Pennsylvania region and beyond. As the region of Western Pennsylvania continues to evolve as a dynamic center of innovation, events such as these, Women Shaping Our Region, serve as catalysts for progress, helps us to celebrate the achievements and contributions of women leaders who are shaping Pennsylvania's future, a future that is prosperous, a future that is safe, and full of opportunities for future generations of women. So sit back, enjoy your lunch. Do not hesitate to learn from one another, network, and continue to be inspired today. Thank you.
So, wow, this is really quite a room full of powerful women. I can feel the energy in the room when we walked in. My name's Leslie Oshie. I am also Butler County Commissioner, and I want to introduce and give a shout out to the brave counterpart who entered this room, Commissioner Kevin Boozle. Where are you, Kevin? There he is. He's waving the white flag. He always supports our women in our community, and so we're grateful that he joins us here today as well. You know, I just want to share with you that tomorrow, just down the road in Saxonburg, we are going to celebrate a woman named Emily Roebling. And Emily was the daughter-in-law of John Roebling. So those of you who are engineers will obviously know that John Roebling was responsible for the 7-cord wire rope that he invented that became part of the Brooklyn Bridge and many other bridges in the mid-1800s, or early and mid-1800s across this region and our country. In fact, several of those suspension bridges were in Pittsburgh over both the Mon and the Allegheny Rivers. But Emily's husband, Washington, so he took over, his dad, designed the bridge. Whoops, sorry, pulled the cord. Washington Roebling, his son, had to finish the bridge when his father died of tetanus due to an accident that he had while he was working on the Brooklyn Bridge. However, then Washington contracted something called Caisson's disease because of his role in the Civil War. And his wife literally had to, was an engineer herself, had to finish the Brooklyn Bridge project and manage that project. And so we think it's just a testament to women who probably she didn't get the credit that she deserved, for making that project happen and making that happen and getting it done. And that is really kind of characteristic of, I think, again, just down the road in Saxonburg and many of our women-owned businesses here. So we're looking forward to that celebration tomorrow in Saxonburg. We welcome you all to join us as we celebrate Emily Roebling and all of the accomplishments of women-owned businesses, we know there are many here in this room. So to those of you who are engineers, to those of you who are creators, to those of you who are helpers of others and who empower others, we say thank you for all that you do. And we hope you enjoy this day, and we're glad you're here in Butler County to join us today. It's a little loose. And now I want to introduce Autumn Patterson from Next Year Bank, one of today's presenters, as well as she serves as vice chair of our Butler County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Autumn.
Hello, everyone. I'm Autumn Patterson. I'm a business development officer at Next Year Bank and a proud member of the Butler County Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee. I'm truly honored to be attending and representing the Butler Chamber at today's incredible Women Shaping Our Region event. I vividly remember attending the first one that had just over 100 people. Today, I stand before a crowd of 500. Each of you eager to hear our esteemed panel, dedicated to collaboration and building momentum, and excited to see the Pittsburgh region grow and become a national leader and one of the very best places for women in business to thrive. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to our sponsors. Our presenting sponsors are Armstrong and Vistage. Our supporting sponsors are Range Resources, Allegheny Mountain, Vitalent, First Energy, Vitalent Foundation, MSA, Pennsylvania American Water, Dinsmore, Coherent, Alliance for Nonprofit Resources, Dollar Bank, Seneca Resources, BAB, Butler County, and Next Year Bank, and Weddings by Jeff Double, who will put your beautiful centerpieces on the table. And now I'd like to introduce Jessica Shaker, the Senior Director of Membership and Engagement for Business Exchange.
Can you all hear me? Awesome. Wow, this room is insane. Oh my gosh. The energy is definitely awesome. How are you guys all feeling? Good? Nice. That's what I like to hear. Well, good afternoon, all you lovely ladies and lovely gentlemen too, of course. My name is Jessica Shaker, and I am the Senior Membership and Engagement Director of the Pittsburgh Business Exchange. I stand before you proudly as part of this organization who is dedicated to contributing to a vibrant business community in the region. And I hope you are all very ready to be inspired today by some of our powerhouse panelists that are about to be coming up here. What's that popular saying? Behind every great woman is another great woman? Or something like that. No, but seriously, we as women truly need to support each other, and every woman's success should be a form of inspiration to another. And there's going to be a lot to be inspired by today, trust me. You are all surrounded by some of the most driven, collaborative, and inspiring women in our region, women who have chosen to go far together, lifting as they climb, building bridges, and breaking barriers. But before we tap into these awesome stories of success and wisdom, it is my honor and privilege to recognize and introduce some esteemed members of our audience. We are graced by the presence of several of our past Women Shaping Our Region panelists and distinguished government officials who've chosen to share their valuable time with us today. Please rise as I say your name, and we're going to all give them one clap, okay? All right. Karina Deal with Deal Automotive. One clap. Thank you. Dr. Karen Riley with Slippery Rock University. Nice. Kelly Hannah Riley with Howard Hanna. Melissa Bijak with Grossman, Yannick, and Ford. Stacy Armagost with Coherent. And for our government officials, we have Senator Pat Stefano, Representative Marla Brown, Representative Valerie Gatos, Commissioner Kevin Boozle, Commissioner Leslie Oshie, and Commissioner Kim Geyer. Thank you all for your unwavering support and dedication to the betterment of our community and also this event. This event, which, by the way, would not be possible without our PBX events mastermind, Amy Clever. You all know her. You get her emails. You've seen her before. She may or may not even be in this room because she's so dedicated that she puts herself before everybody else. But can we just take a second to give her a round of applause for all of her hard work? Awesome. Thanks, Amy. We love you wherever you are. And now, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our presenting sponsor, an organization that I personally hold near and dear to my heart for all that it's done for me in my past 2 years being a part of it. When I first joined my Vistage group, there is absolutely no way I would have been able to be standing in front of you all today, but I'm honored to be here now. So thank you, Vistage. Elise, come on up.
Thanks, Jessica. It's always good getting a personal reference from someone who's experienced the organization. So within my first few words, you'll probably notice that I'm not originally from Yins. At least I got the lingo right. My family and I moved from South Africa about a year ago. And what a fascinating personal journey it's been. Arriving in a new country, you have this urge to try and fit in. You want to sound and look like everyone around you. At one point, I was even considering finding accent lessons so that I could sound more American and like all of you. But then one day it hit me. Maybe being different is not something to hide. Maybe being different is something to embrace and celebrate. Different means new perspectives and a fresh new lens. Perhaps being different is not a weakness, but a superpower. We all have unique contributions to offer, and today is about celebrating that. We all know it's really important to surround ourselves with great people. So today, you're in the right place. We have incredible people in the room and a phenomenal panel ready to share their wisdom with us. So I really hope you enjoy this incredible day with us. So now it is my pleasure to introduce and hand over to our moderator, WXPI news anchor, Lisa Sylvester.
Good morning, everyone. I want to make sure this mic is on. Can you hear me okay? All right. I just want to tell you what a pleasure it is to be here with all of you. And Ethan reminded me of this. I wasn't quite sure and was trying to go back and think what year was that, but I actually was part of the inaugural panel, the very first panel for this event. It's now 5 years ago. And back then, as I am coming full circle right now, being the moderator of this event, I am so honored to be around so many positive, uplifting women who have created a path. Sometimes there's not even a path that exists. You know, one of the things about success that I have learned, and as you get older in life, you're able to look back and you can reflect what is a secret to success. One of those secrets of success is not being competitive, but being in that creative space, that creative, collaborative space. And this is one of those spaces. And so I am so honored to be here and to be with you today. I do want to acknowledge really quickly, we also have the mayor of Slippery Rock, John David Longo, here, if we can acknowledge him as well as one of our esteemed guests. And before we really get started, I do want to take a moment to thank someone who is not here with us, and that is Jim Roddy, the late Jim Roddy. I am standing here today because of Jim Roddy. I mean, literally. Jim Roddy called me. It had to have been, he called me on my cell phone. It was probably about a year ago. I mean, that's how long it was. And he asked me, will you be the moderator for this panel? And I said, absolutely. Tell me when it is. And this would have been last year, a full year ago. I had no idea what I would be doing on October 11th of 2024. I just knew that Jim Roddy asked me to do it, and I said yes, and I put it on my calendar. And Jim was absolutely delightful. I'm sure many of you know him and have known him for decades as our first Allegheny County executive. He would tell me fun stories about how he met his wife. He was married to his wife for 70 years. And I asked him, what is the secret to a long marriage? And he would say, a short memory and separate bank accounts. That's his joke, not mine. He gets credit for it. But he also delighted me when I asked him, how did you meet your wife? And I got to tell you, it has something to do with sneaking into a dorm room through a window. Back then, they had these houses, and there was the mother of the house. And so he literally was coming through a window. That's how he met his wife. But I am so happy to have known Jim Roddy, and I'm happy to be here because it is because of Jim Roddy who asked me to be here. And I also want to acknowledge a couple other people. Ethan Nicholson, who also has been very persistent and has always invited me to his wonderful events. If we can give him a round of applause for all that he has done for this organization. I also want to acknowledge Jordan Grady. You know, behind a lot of great events are the people behind the scenes. And Jordan Grady, as the president of Butler County's Chamber of Commerce, he has done so much. In the last 5 years, membership has grown by about 50%. I mean, that is remarkable. And he has also increased programming substantially. So if we could acknowledge his efforts as well. Now, the goal here and why we are all here is to hear from these wonderful ladies and these wonderful women, all of the wonderful things that they have done. And I've had a chance to read their bios. If you have a chance, it's in your program as well. I will call them all up to the stage one by one. We did have a programming change. So if you look at your program, Stacey Garrity could not be with us. She had a family emergency, but we are so fortunate and lucky that Dina Powell-McCormick has stepped into her place as Vice Chairman, President, and Global Head of Client Services at BDT and MSD Partners. We welcome you to the stage, and you can have a seat there. If we can give her a warm welcome. And I'm sure you probably know that her husband is also running for office, but we will continue with that. All right, our next speaker is Laura Ellsworth of Jones Day, partner in charge of Global Community Services Initiatives. And we have Laurel Zemba, Director of Public Affairs at Range Resources. Dr. Ashley Brown Burtwell, the head of school at Sewickley Academy. And we have Megan Sweeney, Vice President of Tri-County Management and the owner of 21 locations of McDonald's Corporations. Now, the questions that we have were all submitted from you. They actually did a survey and they asked you, what would you like to hear? So these are the questions that come from you. I will take a seat shortly and we can get started. I think they're going to switch out my mics now. I think you can hear me now. I just switched out the mics. I hope there's not too much feedback. And again, thank you very much for being here today. I'm going to let that settle and say, all right. First, what we're going to do is we are going to ask each of our panelists an individual question that is specific to them, and then we will all ask them general questions. And I'm going to begin first with Dina Powell-McCormick.
So I ended up working in Washington for several years, having the privilege of working for President Bush and then Condi Rice at the State Department. And then after that, had a first initial 10-year run being the president of the Goldman Sachs Foundation, where we built some initiatives where I met Laura, called 10,000 Women and 10,000 Small Businesses, which we'll get into later because we're extremely proud of that program that has worked with thousands of female entrepreneurs around the world. And then in a sort of moment I didn't expect, my old mentor, Condi Rice, said, I think you ought to consider going back into government. And for about a year and a half, I served as Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump, where I had the privilege of working on the foundations of the Abraham Accords. So I've had a very honored to have served in government and in business.
Oh, right.
So my name's Laura Ellsworth. My official title is Partner in Charge of Global Community Service Initiatives at a global law firm called Jones Day. It is the worst title and the best job in the world. It is a really large law firm, 40 offices on 5 continents around the world. About 35 years ago, I became the first woman to lead the major law firm office in Pittsburgh of a major international law firm, served on the management committee of the global law firm. Fast forward, I had a brief foray running for governor of Pennsylvania. And so I know what it takes from family members to do that and to support somebody who is doing that, regardless of their party. They are making a huge sacrifice for all of us as citizens. So I just want to take a moment to thank you, Dina, for doing that and for what you guys are doing. In that job, what I do is I coordinate our community work around the world with our clients, who tend to be the largest companies in the world. And we tackle really serious problems like human trafficking, like hate crimes, like immigration. And I am privileged to lead here in Pittsburgh the Eradicate Hate Global Summit, which was founded after the Tree of Life killings. When the people of Pittsburgh came together and resolved that this city would be remembered not for what he did here, but how we as a country and a region responded to what he did. And I'm pleased to announce that our next summit is October 21st. Starting here, we are now the largest organization in the world of anti-hate experts from every discipline, from countries around the world. So whoever you are and whatever you do, whether you are in law, medicine, law enforcement, tech, civil society, teachers, whatever you do, you own a part of the solution to the hate that surround us in this world. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me here.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for giving up your lunch on a beautiful Friday afternoon to be here with us today. My name is Laurel Zimba. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for Range Resources, and I will probably be the most relatable person on the panel today. Geez, you guys are a tough act to follow, and I'm sure it's just going to keep getting better. Again, I grew up in a small town in the Mon Valley. Anyone familiar with Mon Valley, Charleroi area? I grew up in a small town called Ellsworth next to Bentleyville. Went to Bentworth High School. Yeah, next to Bentleyville. And then I went to Duquesne University. And I started my career at Consol Energy. I worked in the coal industry. I've always been in fossil fuels, now with the natural gas industry. So some could say I've been moving my way up the fossil fuel chain. Think we might. Oh, okay. I think we're good again. But I have a lot of great respect for my colleagues formerly in Consol and at Range, and I can't wait to talk about a lot of the exciting things we're doing. I would say a passion of mine, and I want to highlight. I have a table full of people I love over here, including friends, family, my colleagues at Range, and there are two very special people: Tanya Vokes, who's the CEO of Dress for Success, and then Liz Mims, who's their community outreach manager, are here at the table. I have a particular affinity for the work that Dress for Success does for the members of our community. So if you'd like to learn more about Dress for Success's mission, especially especially in Pittsburgh, please come to our table. And Liz and Tanya would love to talk to you about that. We started something about 8 years ago at Range called Power of Her, and we've partnered with Dress for Success for the last 2 years for this Power of Her event, where we host about 100 high school students, females, into our building. We talk to them about not just resume tips and what not to ask in a job interview, but also dating safety, financial literacy. We did a service project for domestic violence services of Southwest PA. So it's really a collaborative, comprehensive workshop we do with these young ladies. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, but that is growing up in a small town. My mom was a single mom. My mom's here too, and my Aunt Bernie are here. I really empathize with a young woman, a woman's challenge, a mother's challenge on being out of the workforce, having to get back into the workforce, taking care of a family, supporting the family. So that has my mom's just life has resonated with me, in addition to the mission for Dress for Success. So thank you very, very much for being here.
I joked with Laurel that she seemed to already know everybody in the room. So my name is Ashley Burtwell, and I am the head of school at Swickley Academy. This is my 4th year in that position. And Swickley Academy is the oldest co-ed independent day school in the Pittsburgh region, founded in 1838. And over that nearly 200-year history, we've been committed to academic excellence through a balance of classical education, or a focus on your core subjects, reading, writing, history, math, science. We still teach students how to write in cursive with a modern education. I get asked that question. Second grade is when it happens. With a balance with modern education. So focused on innovation. How do we prepare kids for college, but most importantly for the jobs of tomorrow? My ties with Swickley Academy date back to being a student at the school in the 1990s. And so it's, a very meaningful position for me to serve in. I have since also been a member of the Board of Trustees at Swickley Academy. And now, in addition to being the head of school, I am honored and delighted to get to have my 2 little kids at the school with me. While I always envisioned a career in education, I completed my PhD in organizational behavior from MIT in Boston over a decade or so ago, and spent years teaching and doing research on topics of interpersonal negotiations, groups, teams, leadership, and consulted on many of those same topics as well. But I will say that my current position is the one that has been most professionally gratifying and fulfilling, and it is such an honor to get to serve in education today at the pre-K through 12 level. So I'm looking forward to sharing time with all of you today. Thank you for having us.
Hi, I'm Megan Sweeney. I am a 21 franchisee of McDonald's. I am 3rd generation. Probably the most interesting fact about that is that my grandfather opened the first McDonald's in Pittsburgh with his business partner, Jim Delegati, in 1957. So for anybody who doesn't know, the history of the first McDonald's was April 15th, 1955. And my grandfather met Ray Kroc at a restaurant show in May of 55. And it took 2 years to get a bank to give them the money to get the McDonald's. So... well, it was a pipe dream at that time. So my career before McDonald's was, my passion was athletics, college athletics. I worked at Robert Morris University as an assistant athletic director, and I did all the rules and regulations. And I figured out that I really enjoyed working with the students, but my day-to-day was with the coaches. And I decided that as growing up, my father did not let us do anything involved in the business. He said, if you come to it, you will come to it on your own. Go find your passion. And if you come back, it's meant to be. I figured out in 2008 that it was meant to be, and I jumped ship from college athletics and went over to the McDonald's business, and ended up having to go through. So McDonald's has a very lengthy approval process to become an owner-operator. It took me 3.5 years, but I had to start as a crew person all the way up to a supervisor before I could be approved and then purchase my first restaurant. So my passion was always being involved in the community, and McDonald's gave me that opportunity to be one of the largest things in the community, so that we could have our footprint known. So my people are empowered to go to all the local whatever's, a lot of elementary school, a lot of arts, or a lot of art clubs in the high schools and whatever. We want to be well known in the community for being a good partner.
All right, I'm turning my mic on. Can you hear me okay? All right. We are now going to ask each of our panelists an individual question, and I will begin with you. So, Dina, in one of your roles, and you've had several roles, but one of your roles as Goldman Sachs Foundation, you built two of the most successful programs that supported female entrepreneurs, and you mentioned this, 10,000 women and 10,000 small businesses. These programs helped people across the globe and right here in Pennsylvania. So can you tell us, what did you learn from this experience, and what are some of the common challenges that women entrepreneurs face?
Well, we actually started in 2007, and it kind of delved into the financial crisis. And one of the things that we did was a ton of research initially, and we found that female entrepreneurs were getting so much less capital, did not have access to the pragmatic business education that they needed, and yet they were holding up our country because most of them that own small businesses were creating the new jobs that were desperately needed. And so we launched initially this program called 10,000 Women, which to date is still the largest program that provides capital, business education, in a pragmatic, not theoretical, like how do you grow your business? How do you do an entire accounting program? How do you market? And so it's really for small businesses that want to grow. Everything from bakeries to landscape artists to web designers. And the common theme was that these women had extraordinary passion, as you can see, an extraordinary drive, but they just didn't have the tools that a lot of men had. And you know what thing they really didn't have was a network. The network that men have that we take for granted. And so these business owners also coming together to give each other business, refer business to each other, made a huge difference. Throughout the years, we measured the impact, and we were actually able to measure that 80% of the graduates of the program increased their revenues, 60% created net new jobs. But what was different about women entrepreneurs is that they paid it forward. They often took a lot of the proceeds, revenue, and invested it back into community, and they always invested it into the next generation of female entrepreneurs. 9 out of 10 went on to mentor at least 10 other female entrepreneurs. So we were extremely excited. I'm particularly proud that hundreds of those businesses were here in Pennsylvania, but we also worked around the world, and that we felt it was really important as a global company to also, especially in the hardest places where women really don't have access to anything. Way back, we started working, believe it or not, in Afghanistan. And I just want to share one story that epitomizes, I think, the power of economic independence for women, even in the very toughest countries in the world. We did a program working with the American University of Afghanistan. And believe it or not, at that time, schools were opening for women in Afghanistan, and we worked with about 400 female entrepreneurs. One of them, Rangina Hamidi, owned a company called Kandahar Treasures, where she would go across the country to the most conservative provinces and find women who were not able to leave their homes in Taliban-controlled areas. And she told us this story about a woman in Bamyan, which was probably the most conservative province. She said this woman had gotten married at 14 years old. She had never gone to school, and she literally doesn't leave her house. But ever since Rangina, the model was that she would take a handicraft that these women would make, sell them, and bring back a monthly stipend that they earned. And the woman in Bamyan made beautiful scarves, and they were selling really well. And on a monthly visit to give her, her check that month, the woman grabbed her hand and said, "Rangina, my husband has never respected me. My husband has never asked my opinion on anything. But ever since I started making a tiny bit of money, he's suddenly asking me things. Like last week when he said, You know I'm against girls' education, but I see these schools coming up. I guess I should ask you, since we have 5 daughters, what you think about school for them. And like, I think I would have been like, please, please, please let my daughters go to school. But she was so much smarter. She said, well, you know, I have failed you as a wife. I have only borne you girls. And so when they reach age, you're going to have to provide 5 dowries and work your whole life to pay it off. But if we force them to go to school, they will learn a skill or a trade like me, and they will take care of you in your old age. And the husband paused and he looked at her and he said, you are right. We will force them to go to school. And sure enough, those 5 girls not only completed primary school, but they completed secondary school, which is so unusual there. And while that woman will never read or write, will never leave her home, she changed the course of a generation of her family by being just a little bit economically independent. And so I think we believed in that power when we launched and over the years saw 10,000 women, 10,000 small businesses, and a program we're really proud of, 1 million Black women, that is specifically dedicated to investing in the opportunity gaps that Black women uniquely face.
Thanks to their wives. All right. The next question to Laura Ellsworth. So you described your resume, the accolades, all of your accomplishments. You manage a number of individuals. I know that it's got to be sometimes, and a lot of women in this room can relate to this. I know I can personally. It's sometimes exhausting to do it all. I mean, it really is. So what advice would you offer to women on maintaining a healthy work-life balance? How do you basically balance the business career, your personal life, your strategies, wanting to get ahead, keeping focused on your career goals? How do you balance all of it, and how do you create a healthy lifestyle? And advice for the women in this room?
Well, I think the first piece of advice. Okay, now it's working. This is how you fix it. So the first suggestion I would make to you guys is not to think of it as a zero-sum game. Don't think about building up barriers. Think about embracing. And as I was listening to the women up here, I'm going to draw on them for some examples of why I say that. So I believe in the power of one. And I believe, in fact, in the power of one even more in women than I do in men, and I apologize to the men in the room. And I'll mention a man, Jim Roddy. Jim Roddy, we are all in this room today because of one person, Jim Roddy. Happened to be a man. Yeah. And when Jim Roddy passed away, I went to his going away party. His celebration of life. We called it his going away party. And when I walked in that room, it was a room this big. And every single person in that room was someone I admired tremendously. And I realized that they were there for the same reason that I was there. He was our mentor. He was our teacher. He cared about us in the quiet moments when he gave us guidance and wisdom and advice. And I realized in that moment that he had built a generation of people. He did that. And when you hear Dina tell this story about 10,000 women and 1 million this, all of these programs she created, what she did was she reached out to the people she knew. She reached out to big international law firms. And she's pretty cool, right? So when she calls, you pick up the phone. And she mobilized all of us. So we worked all over Africa working on these programs. We worked all over the United States working on these programs. We did all of that work. She mobilized all of that work because of one person. We are all women. We are super multitaskers, better than anybody else. And with all due respect, better than men, because we have to be, right? And so my suggestion to you is multitask, and I'll give you 2 examples. I do a tremendous amount of work in the community, and I know all of you do too, right? Serve on a nonprofit board, right? Let's just take that as an example. When you're in that room, you are there because you are doing something that feeds your soul. You're doing something that you care about. Number 2, you are surrounding yourself with other community leaders, business leaders, who share the same passion. Good plan. Best networking in the world. Number 3, you're there to serve your cause. So rather than going around and giving somebody a card and telling them how good and important you are, show them. Be who you are. Be smart. Be creative. Be collaborative. Be a leader. Then what else are you doing? You are improving your own leadership skills out of the view of your boss, so that if you screw up every now and then, it's just all to the good, okay? So you're improving all of your skills. You're serving your community. You're doing business networking. You are doing all of these things in the same hour. And extra bonus points. How many people in this room have children? Extra bonus points if you take your kids with you. And I'll give you 2 examples. When my son was 6, I work for a school called the Bonnie Christian Academy. It's a small inner city school, really difficult, challenging family situations. And we had an issue that involved our 6-year-olds. So I take him with me. He sits in the room. He listens to all this. We're driving home. I said, okay, what's your recommendation? He goes, huh? I said, well, they're 6, you're 6. What do you recommend? And he thought for a moment, and he gave me a really good idea that I had not thought of. So I thought I was teaching him something, and he actually taught me something. And I'll tell you one more story about that that touches on McDonald's. When I was a little kid, my dad was like the world expert in a disease called retinoblastoma, tumor of the eye. And it was almost uniformly fatal. And wherever you were in the world, he would travel all over the world, which is how I got to South Africa. We were talking earlier. He would travel the world and treat these children for free. And if they had really advanced causes, he would fly them to New York and treat them for free, which is where I grew up. He was also to Dr. To Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra. Please tell me you know those names, because sometimes I tell this story and I get the dog look. And so he would use their money to fly them to New York, but they had nowhere to live, so they lived with us. And I grew up my whole childhood with all of these sick families, and my job when I came home at 3:30 was, play with this kid, hold this sibling, do a dance for this mom. She had a really bad day. And after a few years of this, my mom said, Bob, we can't do this anymore. So she, power of one, a woman, organized all of her friends, raised all this money, collected all this furniture and clothing, and got us little kids one hot summer in Harlem to paint and hammer, and created what was at the time called Reese House, and became the prototype for Ronald McDonald House, because her Mr. Kroc, after he finished meeting with her father, was hospitalized at Columbia Presbyterian and saw this house. Everything I do at Eradicate Hate is based on what? What I watched my parents do. And my parents weren't home reading to me every night because they were out trying to do this. But I will tell you, as sure as I'm sitting here, I am the person who I am today because of what I watched them do and what they invited me in to join them doing. And so please think of these opportunities as a way to enrich and embrace and raise your children and do what you do better. And you can do it all in the same hour. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that is just absolutely amazing. And I am a mom. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I think it is so important that we pour into them. Sometimes we get so busy and wrapped up in our day-to-day lives that it's so important to pour into our children and be aware of the young men and women that we are raising them and teaching them the values of what you were saying about the power of one. That is powerful in and of itself. And I'm a big believer in positive ripples. Like, you don't necessarily know how far your impact is going to reach, but it's like dropping a pebble and you watch the ripples and one thing. And so I do a lot of mentoring and working one-on-one with students. I mean, literally like working with them on their college exams and their college essays, which is what we're going through right now. But it's important because I know my own kids, they are on a path and they are on a great path, but not everybody has access to those kinds of resources. So if we can power of oneness, and I love that, and I'm going to teach that to my kids, the impact that you have. It's those positive ripples. So think about that as you go out into your community, your neighborhood, your world, putting out those ripples. And I will turn the mic over now to Laurel Zemba. You are one of the highest ranking women in the corporate world of oil and gas industry. It's amazing everything that you have accomplished. That is an industry that, as we all know, is male dominated. Can you speak to some of the challenges that you have faced, how you've overcome those challenges to becoming part of the senior management team? And also, what advice would you give to women who are aspiring, who wanted to enter in the oil and gas industry?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. Well, first, I will say that yes, oil and gas is male dominated, but it would be tough to find an industry that really isn't male dominated. However, and who's familiar with the McKinsey and Company Women in the Workplace study? I think they just came out. I see a hand in the back. Their 10-year anniversary survey just noticed that significant progress is being made. Lots more progress needs to be made. But if you look at the C-suite, back in 2015, I believe it was, there were about 17% of women represented in C-suite positions, but now it's 30% as of, I believe it was 2024. So we're making progress in the right direction, and obviously more progress needs to be made. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make is, yes, oftentimes I've been the only woman around a table full of men. And it's been a challenge, but it's also sometimes a challenge to be a woman around a table full of women, right? We need to do better advocating for other women and ourselves, first of all. But one thing I do want to, and can you all hear me? I mean, I can speak up. All right. One thing I do want to say, as far as is unique to the energy industry. So I'm someone who goes to work. I work in a climate controlled office. I wear heels to work. I wear suits to work. I'm working with a group of employees, a lot of our field employees who go out into the field, no matter what the weather is, in their Carhartts, in their FR, who don't work a hybrid schedule, who didn't have the privilege of working from home, who have to go and produce the energy that runs America and helps to liberate our allies, no matter what the conditions are outside. So it had been a challenge to, how do I relate to these employees? How do I gain their respect? And I think a lot of that was rolling up your sleeves, putting on your FR, getting out into the field with them, showing a real, genuine concern for their roles, respect for their roles, and an interest in what they do day to day. We take folks on tours. We're always out in the field, and we couldn't be prouder to showcase how we produce natural gas safely, responsibly, and in an environmentally sound manner. And if anyone in here is interested in going on a tour of a well pad, I have a table of people that would love to talk to you about that. So that is one thing, getting to know our field employees, gaining their respect. And then the last thing I will say, as far as maybe a tip, I identify strategic allies in the company. And it's not someone that you have to necessarily label a mentor. It's not someone you have to label a sponsor. But if you look at at the field, wherever you work, if it's in a nonprofit, if it's in private sector, wherever you work, or if it's volunteering at your child's school, there are people that have influence, that have the respect of others. And if you identify those strategic allies, learn about them, and show them how you can provide value to them, they will in turn advocate for you in a room that you're not in. And I think that's probably helped me most throughout my career. So thank you.
Our next question is for Dr. Ashley Birtwell. So Sewickley Academy was founded in 1838 as an all-boys school, and today you are the first woman to hold that leadership role. So what does this milestone mean for you, and how do you envision the future of women in education?
Absolutely. I have to say that historically, or typically, I often don't think about being a woman in the workplace. But of course, serving as the first female head at Sewickley Academy with a 200-year history, so that's a long time period to not have someone in that role, is meaningful. And as you can imagine, I have many parents, faculty, students who comment on what an example that is for our community. So my goal is to always try to just lead by example and show that when you work hard, when you stay determined, when you stay focused, you can accomplish what you set out to do. So this is, a lot of my confidence to stepping in as the first female head, I can, attribute to actually being a student at the academy. I was fortunate to have had several really special teachers who helped me to develop my strengths, who helped me find my passions, who pushed me to my best potential, especially in math and sciences where I most certainly could have doubted myself. And I'm so lucky because many of those teachers I still get to cross paths with, including just as recently as over this past weekend when we hosted our alumni weekend. So as far as the future for women in education, my goodness, I feel like that could be a whole panel in and of itself, because from my vantage point, the educational landscape is changing at a dramatic speed. And particularly for private schools like ours and for higher ed, you're just seeing a tremendous impact of AI and future technologies impacting all aspects of education. How we teach, what we're teaching, how you run schools as a business or an institution. And so whether women of the future are looking to go into a classroom teaching type role, a staff position, administrative, in my opinion, inevitably AI and future technologies as a whole are going to impact those. So one of my goals as head of the school is to really empower female students especially to consider going into STEM-related fields. Second, trying to open their eyes and encourage them to appreciate the importance of data literacy. And third, really helping them to appreciate the significance that AI will likely have on most, if not all, fields. So 2 examples of how I tried to do that. This past spring, I took about a dozen students to MIT in Boston, my old stomping grounds, and we spent a day and a half just meeting with faculty members, hearing about how AI is impacting fields as wide-ranging as healthcare and medicine to arts and theater and so much more. This year on campus, we're hosting a STEM speaker series with faculty experts from a wide range of universities, including Cornell, MIT, others. And again, my intent in doing this is to try to open the eyes of all of our students, female, but our male students as well, for them to appreciate how much jobs that they're thinking they may want to go into, industries that they're interested in, how those are going to evolve over the next handful of years. And then my job as part of that, right, is what are the hard skills, what are the soft skills that we as a school need to be training students for so that they're successful in the jobs of tomorrow. So whether, women are looking to go into education or any other field, I feel like part of our commitment as an educational institution today is how are we thinking ahead to what jobs of tomorrow are going to look like for them.
Excellent, excellent. Right. Thank you so much. Our next question is for Megan Sweeney. So we all know that the restaurant and tourism industry has faced significant workforce challenges, work shortages. How have you faced some of these challenges head on? And also, what initiatives have you, or McDonald's in general, what initiatives do you have in place to empower female franchise owners and employees?
Well, when I got into the business, one of the things that my dad had done was he had brought in an HR consultant to talk to our people, and the gentleman's name was Jack Lee, and he would say, you hired their brawn, you get their brain for free. Mm-hmm. And so we made this mantra or whatever, and it holds true. It wasn't something that we came up with. It was stuff that were brought to us, but it's with our people, they are first and foremost in our organization. We had just celebrated our, I'm 47, so 46th annual awards banquet. And it's for any employee that has 3 or more years of tenure. And our longest tenured employee that was celebrated this year was 45 years. Wow. And so we had about 350 out of 1,500 qualify. And then of that, whatever. So that is part of it. So we always want them to know that without them, we don't have a place. But to take that even further in the workforce is the three prominent forward-thinking, I would say, things that we do are people are help me with my small personal problems, make me a part of the process, and reward me for my contribution or acknowledge my contribution, not necessarily reward as in paycheck, because paychecks or raises typically in my field last to the first paycheck. And so if they're not stimulated or rewarded, and celebrated and made part of the process, then it is not something that they want to get up and do every day. So that is the number one thing that we have done in our field or in our organization. With women operators in McDonald's, there's a program called the Women's Operator Network. And back in the day, when I first got in 2008, it was really a meeting that none of the guys wanted to go to because they served quiche, not bacon. They talked about talked about their, the feelings and the things that the women operators could do to help change the business, like with the Ronald McDonald House or with their people. But it wasn't necessarily business focused. It was always the side part of the business. I now sit on the board of the WON, and we are very involved in the conversations of day-to-day going on inside McDonald's, how to continue to build the future of female franchisees. How do we get them up to be the large multiples? How do we keep their cash flow above the men's? So we went from kind of being the wife of franchisees to now leading our own charge. And in fact, the C-suite has said to us that we are the probably the most put together diversity group with a vision. So it's been a long change, but that's how McDonald's does it.
Thank you. And now I have some general questions. You don't all have to answer it, but if you feel like you have something to say on this subject, feel free to jump in here in no particular order. But obviously, you are all wonderful examples of leadership and have attained and have done so much with your careers and what you have done personally in terms of giving back to your community. What techniques do you employ when gender differences, though, can cause some challenges?
Holding the mic. Well, I think it starts with being really honest about your strengths and weaknesses. And something that I learned over the years is that women are so much harder on ourselves. I will confess, one of my traits that I really work on is to, let things go. Like if I've messed up, not reliving it in my head over and over again, but we all do it. I remember a woman that worked for me. We had a really big, important pitch to a client, and we had just practiced. We were so well prepared, and she absolutely crushed it. This young woman really crushed it. But she messed up on like a tiny little thing. And the men in the room, you could tell, had so not prepared. And so we ended up winning the client. We left, and they were high-fiving each other. They had said the company name wrong. They'd messed up so much, but they were high-fiving each other like we crushed it. And she obsessed for 3 days straight about, I can't believe I got that wrong. I can't believe. And I said, you know what? That is so much wasted energy that men don't have. They charge forward, my friend. And we do that. And I think it's a confidence thing that is hard. It's hard. And you really have to work on it that way because you really have to. I don't know if any of you saw Roger Federer's commencement at Dartmouth. Did you all see this? And he talks about, obviously he's one of the greatest tennis players in the world. And he said out of 1,500 matches that I've played, I won 80% of them. But how many points do you think I won in those games? And it was less than 50%. And he said, so every other point I would lose. And if I thought about the point I lost, I was never going to win the match. I had to go on to the next point to win that. And I think that's something that is a little different sometimes. And I also think, failing, what's at least for me, I have learned the most when I have failed. I don't think you grow and go on to the next thing because it's honestly hard to learn from success. And I think for women to recognize that's part of it and that's okay. And we're not going to get to that next level or that next job if we don't have that ability to fail. And that is also what leads me to what I think is so critical for women, and that's mentoring. Both mentors that you have and being a mentor. And being a good mentee, if you will, which means having somebody that you ask to mentor you, but asking them to give you the tough love. And I have had the privilege of having men and women mentors. And sometimes people are scared to give you real feedback. But again, how do you grow if you don't ask for that? And so having that constructive feedback has been so helpful, especially sometimes from men who, again, they have to have a safe place to say, are you sure you want to hear this? And if you are ready to hear it. One of my bosses gave me some really tough love as I had gotten to a pretty senior role in business. And he said, you've just got to grow a little thicker skin because you wouldn't be sitting at this table if the decisions were easy. So you're going to mess up sometimes. You're going to be criticized a lot of the time, but don't be at this table if you can't take it. And that was such good advice for me. And so I think being open to that feedback from men in many cases, and then paying it forward. I can't say it more beautifully than Laura and the power of one, but just don't forget what an impact you're having on somebody's life, particularly women that work for you. I have a saying that I really love, which is, where are all the women that worked for you? That ought to be a legacy that you think about in your life. Because if you've been a great boss and mentor, and friend, then it means they've gone on to reach their dreams too.
Very good. Do either of you anyone else want to take that question about the gender differences?
So I would say probably one of the things that Ashley had said was be grounded in facts and in data, because that's really you don't want to fall into the stereotypes of emotional decision. And once you can stay grounded and know your stuff, once you know your stuff and then you build the respect of the people that you're in the room with, then it's really hard they'll eventually start to turn to you for the data and the facts. So that's what I would say from a leadership standpoint. If you know your stuff, nobody can question.
That's very true.
Well, the microphone's being passed. I'll just offer a small one too. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this, but I often joke at work that I'm going to turn off internet for the day. So I find that especially when you're facing any challenge at work, but especially gender differences, gender biases, a face-to-face communication. I think so many of us are, there's a temptation to hide behind email, to use text, but we all know the tone can be lost, the wrong word choice, and it just leads to so much more conflict. So I'm sure people get, tired of my joke that I'm going to turn it off one day, but just, having the confidence, which goes back to Dina's point too, of just sitting down in a room with someone and having a face-to-face conversation. I would also say I always try very hard to hear the other side, right? So try to hear their perspective. Always go in with the research and a compelling case to share my perspective, and then open it up to a question. How do you propose that we move forward here? And try to shift it into a collaborative conversation. Now, that doesn't always work, right? Not to sugarcoat it, but I think much of this also comes from teaching negotiations for so many years. These are basic negotiation principles too, of like, where do we try to find that mutual understanding? And being really honest. I find that if I try to leave work at the end of the day and I haven't been honest in one of those conversations and voice my opinion, that's what keeps me up at night. That I didn't feel comfortable enough to put forth my ideas, even if we don't end up using them, right? But again, face to face always goes better.
One other thing I'll add, a key component to effective communication is versatility. So I try not, though I always try to maintain my values, I try not to be the same person with everyone I communicate with. So I look at it less as a gender thing and more as making it about the receptor of the communication and their style. So who in the room has heard of a course called Social Styles? It's, I know, range people, raise your hand because they require us to go through it, right? So there are 4 basic communication styles. It's driver, amiable, expressive, and analytical, okay? And you all fit on one level of that spectrum. Sometimes a driver doesn't want to be massaged and asked about their weekend and how are you doing and what's the kids do. They just want to know how you can move the bottom line forward and how you can help them get results. Now, an expressive person does want to talk about what they did over the weekend and how it was so great. And so I think I encourage you to look towards that kind of social styles thing, training course, and it really helps you adapt your versatility to the receptor of the communication.
Really good stuff. Good
Just
stuff.
give one for
Yes,
one.
please.
I love this Transformers thing.
Mhm.
I love this Transformers thing. You know those Transformers, they transform into whatever they need to be to win. I love that. I'm going to use that. So the one thing I will add to this is don't assume the worst.
Mhm.
So a quick story. I was a really young associate and they asked me to write this strategy memo and they really liked it. And so they gave me the opportunity to go into this big fancy meeting with the senior partner with the long conference room table and everybody's sitting around. And the guy who gave me the opportunity to present my memo in person, we're all sitting there, this lovely breakfast like they used to do in the 80s. And so I'm sitting there right next to this lovely, lovely patrician managing partner looks at me and says, "Oh, are you the person who made these lovely muffins for us this morning?"
Oh my goodness.
And I paused for a moment and I said, "No, but I wrote that lovely memo." And afterwards, the rest of the meeting went pretty well. And afterwards, he called me into his office and he said, "I understand I owe you an apology." And I said, "No, you don't owe me an apology at all. I just wouldn't know how to bake a muffin if it fell on me." And he became one of my best mentors. And some man went to bat for me and went into his office and was like, "We could get sued for what you just said, probably." But the humanity of it, and what somebody told me once, and I've watched it since, is that and men, you can weigh in whether this is true, that when a senior man looks at another man in the room, he sees himself. When a senior man looks at the woman in the room, he sees his daughter. Now, this works really well for you guys because there's daughters now, right? In the 80s, there weren't daughters. We were like, depending on the men to help us. They all have daughters. And so if you feel that somebody's being a little paternalistic and a little, demeaning to you and being paternalistic, it might be an awesome superpower for you. So do not take it the wrong way. Okay? Might be bad, might be great.
Yeah, I think it's important to know, as I'm dropping things, I think it's important to know your superpower. I think, and something that on the surface can seem a negative, you can turn that and sort of manifest it and bring it about to use that as something positive. And so I do want to ask this question because I think sometimes a lot of it is getting out of our own head. Sometimes we as women get so sort of fixated on things or fixated on the mistake that you made. So how have you built confidence throughout your career? And as part of that, what's the best advice that you have received and that you still use today? I'm going to just give the mic and you guys can pass it on down, or we can start at the end and work our way up if we want to. Here you are.
Sure, this one was the hardest one to come up with something that would resonate with the whole room. But in McDonald's, we are franchisees, so we're independent small business owners, and we have to answer to a company, Power 50 Forbes company. And one of the things in McDonald's is that as if you're good at your job, you will get promoted on the company side. And so with us, the specific advice is you got to be here when they're gone. And so with that, how do you build your confidence is you have to do this over and over again every so many years with brand new faces. So you just follow your passion and follow your heart to what brought you to the business, and you stay ingrained in that, your confidence will grow because your people, in my situation, will support you. And then you start to have these conversations with picturing them in your mind and what they do and the sacrifices they make to somebody who in 2 years will then move on to another job. So that's how you build the confidence, because you're doing it for the reasons why you got into it, not for what you think somebody wants to hear.
I think it was Dina who mentioned earlier the important influence of mentors. And I would say that starting, as I referenced earlier, the strong special teachers I had back when I was even a student in high school, but then, the professors during undergrad and then individuals in the workplace who I've really turned to throughout my career for advice, for suggestions. Often they see strengths in you that you don't see in yourself. Also opening the conversation. And again, I think it was Dina who mentioned opening the space for someone to give you constructive feedback, because people can be so hesitant to want to give you that honest input, but that's what can help you grow the most. So I would say, even to this day, my very first mentor from the summer after my freshman year of college, I get together with for breakfast nearly once a month. And throughout the years, he has helped me see, what I didn't even see in myself at the time, opened up career possibilities that I didn't think of, and gave me that straight feedback that, I always needed throughout the time. I believe in this so much that at Swickley Academy, in addition to just those relationships between teachers and students, we actually started this year a new model that we refer to as a dean model. And they're not just college counselors. We now pair every student after the summer of 8th grade with essentially a mentor who helps find extracurricular activities, internship opportunities, and ultimately then becomes their college counselor. And then also connects them with our other young alum, so that we encourage all of our students, and I think they're required actually, to send networking emails and have phone calls. So you just get practice having those awkward conversations of like, hello, my name is Ashley Burtwell, and I'd love to learn more about whatever the case may be, but really getting comfortable with that. So I would say mentors, and then the advice that has probably helped me the most was to network. And not just for the sake of forming connections, but also to find mentors and people who would support. So much in the spirit of today, of forming connections with people who can be a support to you. We all need those people. And just being, again, strategic, though, about what you say yes to, given we all only have so much time. And then just whatever your industry is, whether it's conferences, whatever the case is. I know early in my career, I would say yes to any conference I could to try to talk about my research. And then that opened up job opportunities that I didn't expect. So I think that goes to show the power of the connections and forming relationships, which I believe wholeheartedly in.
So I think something that's helped me gain more confidence over the years is the realization that you don't have to be perfect, because people crave connection, not perfection. So seeing flaws, messing up a line, being imperfect, that is, it's creating a connection, and it makes you more relatable. So I think realizing that has helped me gain confidence. Something else that's helped me gain confidence is practice, practice, practice. Like, a show of hands, who just likes to wing things? They don't like, who's a winger? Like, I'm just going to wing it. Okay. Who practices and who, okay. You got, all right. We got more practicers. I relentlessly practice. And so I'll give you a quick story. I was giving a presentation to our board of directors last February. And I really, like they say, the mind can't go where the body hasn't been. So if I'm giving a speech, I'm showing up in that room the day before, and I'm walking up on the stage. I'm looking out into the crowd. I'm putting myself in that position, so it is autopilot the next day. But what I did in that instance is, so I think it's not the Wii, but it's like that virtual reality Oculus type thing. Mm-hmm. So they have this app where you can be in a boardroom and have people looking at you and smiling, and it's kind of freaky. But I think if I can talk to these Autobots or whatever they are, then I certainly can talk to a room full of human beings. So I would say, or in my living room, I would take my daughter's stuffed animals and line them up and pretend like they were listening to me, and I was speaking to them. So I would say just practice and just putting yourself as close to being in that position as you will be in the real situation has been very helpful.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
Even this doesn't work anymore.
I think it's working.
While she works on that, I'll
Yeah,
use my
I think it's
outdoor
on.
voice.
I was going to say it's on. It's on.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
So these, Megan and Laurel took my two, which are prepare, and be the one who has the facts. You'd be surprised how many meetings go on and people talk for the longest time and do not know the facts. Especially if you deal with government. I love all you government leaders in the room. I'm just saying. Okay, so anyway. So I'm going to give you two pieces of advice that don't have to do with confidence, but hopefully will be useful to you. And one of them involves Laurel. Posted above my desk is a quote from the Dalai Lama. And it is, whenever possible, be kind. And it is always possible. So a lot of times people think leadership is being a hard ass. It's the exact reverse. It's being kind. And there was one night, you will not remember this, but I was running for governor. It was not a fun day. It was a long, tiring, miserable day, something terrible. And I went into a range event, and Laurel just took a moment and was so kind to me. And I've never forgotten it. I would do anything in the world for her. And people remember.
They do.
She's going to ask me to do so much as soon as this microphone is down. People remember that forever. You know that Maya Angelou quote that people won't remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So I just share that with you. The other one is a piece of advice that my dad gave me, and it is this. When you have an important decision to make, do not make it every time a new piece of information comes in. Wait, let all the information roll in, and then make it once. Right? Because otherwise you're going to be, I'm going to do it. I'm not. I am. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. And it's time to decide, and you're like, I don't know what I want to decide. Right? I'm telling you, if you just wait, let it roll in, make it once, you'll know, and you'll be confident in the rightness of your decision.
That's hard to follow. I actually got some really good advice from my mother-in-law, which was it's never too late to find a new dream or fulfill a new passion. She was a public school teacher in Punxsutawney and loved teaching. I mean, it was her passion. And she really wanted to move up into, bigger roles in education. And my father-in-law became president of Bloomsburg State, and they had to move to Bloomsburg. And it's hard being the wife of a university president. And so she was an awesome partner. And obviously they had massive impact because of how important education is, and especially higher education. And so at 50, she said, I want to go back. I've always wanted to get a PhD. And it was a little bit tense because that was going to take her out of, being, at that level of a partner. And she insisted. She said, I'm going to go back, and I don't care how long it takes me. I'm just so inspired that she did that. It took her a little bit longer because it was actually when Dave was deployed to Iraq, so she had to take 2 extra years. She couldn't really focus, she said. But she met her dream. And I think in some ways that's part of the reason that she and he have such a strong relationship, because she had to do what she wanted to do. And after she got the PhD, she worked in higher education and specific programs that helped really vulnerable children, very vulnerable children, before there were enough of these programs. So don't let anyone stop you. 50 is the new 20.
I absolutely love that. I really do. I would like to just take a moment to give some advice. This is some things that I have told my own kids who are teenagers, and I have told other people's kids, that I've mentored. But do your future self a favor. You have to do your future self a favor, particularly to the young people in this room. What that looks like, if you're in your 20s and 30s, please start and be investing in your 401k. Start investing in yourself. I mean, that's on a financial standpoint. That is on an education standpoint. Do what you need to do for your future self. We're really good about giving back, and I love that. But you do need to plan ahead. What do you want when you're in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, or in your 60s? What do you want financially? What position do you want to be in? You often have to work backwards. In TV world, if you ever wonder how they build a rundown in a show, they back time it. You actually have to work backwards. So do your future self a favor. Remember this moment. Do your future self a favor. What do you want your life to look like? And then plot out and chart out what that course is. But I can tell you, for all you youngins in the room, and I do see some young faces, please start investing. And if you have kids that are in their 20s, please tell your kids to start investing in their 401ks and start saving for retirement. I know they're balancing a lot of things, but do your future self a favor. That's my bit of advice. I'm just going to throw that out there.
That is so true. Thank you for saying that. So true.
All right, back to the program. That was my little public service announcement. But so looking back on your journey to success, if you were starting your career or business from scratch today, what is one thing that you would do differently based on the lessons that you've learned along the way? And again, I will pass the mic. You can have it go down or start in the middle, whichever you prefer.
Okay, I'll start in the middle. Okay, I would say I would have started getting serious earlier. Because growing up, I was okay at a lot of things. I wasn't great at anything. I was pretty average. I would say the only thing I was really good at was being likable and talking to people. But it took me a while to really come into my own. In school, I felt a little bit like a fish out of water, especially at Duquesne. I hadn't found my groove, and I really wasn't sure where I fit in. And I try to tell young people now, when you're in school, when you go to college, it is never going to be easier to indulge your passions than when you're in school, because everything is available to you at your fingertips. And it gets so much more difficult after you graduate to really indulge your passions and to seek out like-minded people. It's so much easier in school. So I would just say I would have gotten a lot more serious earlier in my career. And who knows, I might be president of the United States if I would have done that, right? Why not? Maybe. But yeah, I started late. I started at 30, so I wish I could have started earlier.
I would say I would ask more questions. And in the areas that I'm not the most inclined at, I would have a group of confidants much sooner to help me be more well-rounded and to be better versed. Things that I never thought that I would understand and know are drainage systems and and blueprints. And just different things like that. These were skills that I had to figure out on my own. I think I should have been a little more inquisitive when it first came around to be more on top of my game in the beginning.
So I would have listened to my intuition more and my own gut feelings. And as I was coming out of undergraduate, I wanted to be a teacher at a private school. And several influential mentors in my life suggested that I go spread my wings, try something else. Going back to teaching will always be there. And here for me, it come full circle, and here I am at a pre-K through 12 school. But I can say I spent a lot of years early in my career in positions that weren't nearly as fulfilling or gratifying, because I didn't just listen to my gut and go directly for what I wanted to do. And so I wish I would have listened to my own voice more than perhaps others around me, especially in my early 20s.
So I have two, and they're diametrically opposed, so I don't know which is right. So I'll give you them both. Every night, I have a little talk with myself. And the talk with myself is about what I'm going to do the next day and how I'm going to do it well. Not specific things, values things. I wish, as part of that talk with myself, I had realized the beauty of the moment I was living in that day and not always been planning for the next day. That said, another thing I might have done differently is I was blessed to be in a profession that I found thrilling and rewarding every day. The law is just a continuing, evolving joy. It is continually necessary. It has to grow. Anybody who wants to go to law school and is afraid to see me, you need to go. It's awesome. But I just kind of bobbed along the surface of life, and I got lucky. I got lucky that I bobbed from one thing to another, and somebody saw me do something and asked me to do something else, and it worked out awesome for me. But I was a bobber. And sometimes I wish that I had sort of seen up over the waves that I was bobbing over and had charted a course. I don't know that I would have ended up as great a place as I have found in life, but I do wish I had done that. So those are two completely opposite thoughts. Do with them what you will.
Both valuable. I think I would have given myself a little bit more grace. Mike Devaney, my friend, is here, and I was telling him this morning, I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and that guilt lasts a long time. But grace, because it does let you enjoy the journey a little bit more. It lets you recognize that as a working mom, feeling guilty, all day, whether you're at home and you're feeling like you're not fulfilling your work responsibilities, or you're at work and you're feeling so guilty you're not with your kids. I don't believe there's such a thing called work-life balance. I think it's called you're doing the best you can every day. And I think we're all doing the best that we can, every single day. And so just giving some grace, because it does let you step back a little bit, have perspective, I think be a little more at peace. And I think when you're at peace, obviously you're performing at a much higher level and being who you want to be in a much higher level too. And I do think I did a lot of bringing my kids to stuff, and it was obviously so awesome having my daughters meet some of the amazing women in the programs that I worked on, and it would teach them so much. But they also kept me humble, and I think that was important. I remember one time I was getting an award from a women's foundation for 10,000 women. Our firm was, I should say, and I was accepting it. And the other woman getting it was Idina Menzel. Remember, she was Elsa. How many times have you watched Frozen in this room? If you have, so we have 6 daughters between us, so we've watched it like 1,000 times at least. And so I took Ava with me because she was like, I get to meet Elsa? Like, she could not believe it. And so we're sitting at a little table like this, and they give Indina the award, and then they call me to the stage, and now accepting the award on behalf of for 10,000 women. And Ava grabs my arm, and she's like, why are you getting up? What are you doing? And she was only 7. And I said, I'm getting an award. And she goes, why would you get an award with Elsa? Like, Elsa was so much bigger. But I think that also, making sure that more of that and laughing at life and having your children keep you grounded.
Thank you. We are almost at time, but I want you all first off to give yourselves a round of applause, because something that Dina said, women, we work so incredibly hard, and at the end of the day, we really are just doing the best we can. I'm trying. I think that's what my bumper stickers should say. I'm trying every day. I'm trying. That's what I tell my kids. I'm trying. But I would like to finish with just some closing thoughts. One question we didn't get to, if you want to speak to it, or you can speak on any other subject. Personal brand, self-promotion. How do you do it? I mean, some people are really good at it. I, for one, am not very good at it at all. I'm not wired that way. I'm not wired in the, hey, look at me. If you go to a friend of mine was like, you never post on social media. I'm like, that's because I'm not good at that. That's not my thing. I don't know how to do that. I can do this. I love this. I love this. But so if you can speak about self-promotion, developing your brand, and just some closing thoughts. You want to start down or just take it away?
I'm with you. I'm terrible at it. Fortunately and unfortunately, in my career, every 2 years, I have to be reviewed, and we have to put a list together of the things that the owners are involved in. And so that my team keeps track of that for me. And so they also stand by my side and say that they're humble and let me tell you. So more than anything, I would say the simple fact about this is that Jordan asked me a year ago to be here right after we had reopened a restaurant in Butler. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then I started to really understand what it was. And I was like, why me? Like, what am I going to bring to the table? But I have to say, in my journeys, I am the youngest of 3 girls. I have a father who didn't understand that girls were different than boys at that time because he didn't have the option to understand that. And I've had people ask me, how are you so self-confident? How are you this? I had a type A father who scared the living daylights out of you when he would look over his glasses at you. And then he became my boss. And he went up one side of me one day and down the other in the meeting room. And we got 2 steps outside of the meeting room, and he asked me how my family was. Because business was business and personal was personal. And that is where I have had to live in that space. He is quasi-retired. But without that, I don't know that I would have been anywhere near the success that I am, because I had to get locked in and focused, and it didn't matter who I was or what the answer was. If it wasn't the right answer, it wasn't the right answer. And so that made me just gear down. So, and be involved. I feel like I have a legacy because I'm the third generation. So those are the types of things, but I am terrible at it. So I'm much better at greeting you into my restaurants and giving you nice hot French fries. So. That's very important too.
There seems to be a theme up here that many of us don't gravitate toward building our personal brand. I often think that I am so glad that I was not in the early stages of my career amidst social media and LinkedIn, because that's about the last thing I want to spend time on. I don't think I'm creative enough. I think back to when I would make it at least an annual task of updating my resume, my cover letter, and my husband used to joke that I was a professional resume writer because it was not so much that I always wanted it updated, but more that it helped me develop my leadership story, my narrative, and my elevator pitch. And so fast forward, I actually used to co-teach a class on how to develop your leadership story. And what we used to teach our MBA students in that course was just how important it is to put it into a story form. Because even if you're listening to the panel today, it's when people are sharing the stories that stick with you. So I'm just encouraged to develop the story so people can walk away with that, and then do with that as you wish, whether it's LinkedIn, social media, etc. Before passing it along, I also just want to come back. One of the themes that has really stuck out to me today is this pressure and the perfectionism that we as women especially put on ourselves. And I've reflected on this, and I've kind of succumbed to the fact that I'm never going to give up my tendency to be a perfectionist. I'm not sure I even want to, but I think what I have become more comfortable with, and I hope that to leave this with others to reflect on, is just being more mindful about what we commit to doing. And so I have found that I'd rather do a handful of tasks really, really well. And sometimes that means, very direct conversations with our leadership team, our board of trustees about the strategic priorities that we can commit to. And I'd rather do it once with excellent outcomes versus taking on more. And to that end, I am very big on working with our board in terms of what are our annual goals? And then I break those down, and I have my monthly goals, my weekly goals, and I revisit those every morning over my coffee. And so that I can vet whatever comes my way of, does this align with my goals? And or is it just something that I want to do to fill my cup, like being here today with all of you? So on that note, in closing, I just, again, want to thank all of you for joining us. I want to thank Ethan and Amy and everyone else who played a hand in putting this event together. This is so wonderful. Gatherings like this are great for the connection, but also I hope that we all leave feeling inspired and motivated by each other. And my experience, having recently moved back to Pittsburgh, or relatively recently, is that Pittsburgh is such a unique environment and community where people want to help each other and are so approachable by and large. So thank you for creating this venue, Ethan and others, because it's so wonderful to have a break in our normal schedules to be here together. So thank you.
As far as my personal brand, is concerned, in my responsibilities as a public affairs director, I meet with a lot of folks in the community, a lot of legislators, and I was doing a round table with our local Washington County Chamber of Commerce, and we were meeting with a legislator, and I didn't know anything about this person. So I asked one of my colleagues who had a really good relationship with him, give me the backstory on this man, tell me a little bit about him, just so I know my audience. And my friend at work said, he gave me the facts, the data, but he also said, he is someone you can speak freely in front of. And I thought that was one of the best compliments I've heard about anyone else. So I think as far as my personal brand, I would want people to feel they could speak freely in front of me, that I will give them the space to not always say the right thing, sometimes say the wrong thing, but be respectful enough that I will keep what they're saying in confidence, let them feel they can be real in front of me without it somewhere in the future coming back at them. So I think I've just always wanted to be someone that people felt they could speak freely in front of. So with that, I would also like to echo Ashley's comments with Ethan, Amy, Jordan. Thank you so very much for putting this together. Thank you all for being here. And I will say, I hope you guys kind of feel this too, but sometimes when you're at an event, it flows and it's great, but then sometimes there's a little snap of magic and you feel like, wow, this is really cool. You ladies are remarkable, and I am just humbled sitting up here on this dais with you all. So thank you, and thank you, Lisa, for moderating.
So I'm going to be really old for a second. And I loved what Laura said about being, letting people be genuine in front of you. Because when I'm old and I hear about social media and influencers, right? It's all fake. It's all fake. And so many times now when I hear young people talk about their brand, it's all faking it. And that's the worst thing you can do. An influencer who passionately believes what they believe because they were paid to believe it. I don't get it, okay? I just don't get it. So brand, if you have a brand, have it be like this brand. Have it be real and genuine and true. Because if you're a faker and you can't be trusted, you will never be a good leader, okay? The second thing I might say is this, and some of you have heard me tell this before, and so if so, I apologize. But I was at a dinner in the ballroom at Buckingham Palace with a mutual friend that we both know. My husband, and it is as you would expect. It's this lovely table with charming, with the little naked guys going like this. And, Camilla is sitting at this table, Charles is sitting at this table. And at these events, they seat you opposite your spouse, right? So you talk to the people. So I get talking to this guy next to me. Turns out he's from St. Jude's. I said, oh, St. Jude's. Do you happen to know a guy named Barrett Hike? He said, oh, Barrett Hike is my best friend. I said, oh, well, Barrett Hike was my father's mentor. He was like a son to my father. And he said, my God, is your dad Bob Ellsworth? And I said, yes. And he starts telling me all of these stories that Barrett has told him that he learned from my father about how you devote yourself to curing a disease where all your patients die, and how when you go home at night, your children are demanding of you and your time because they have no idea what you went through that day. And you have to swallow all of that and be there for them. And he's telling me these stories about Barrett and how Barrett became the man he was and the father he was because of the conversations that he had had with my father in the quiet moments when no one was looking. And at the time of that conversation, my dad had been dead for decades. Barrett had been dead for a decade. But what endured over thousands of miles and decades of time was what those two men meant one to the other in the quiet moments when no one was looking. And so brand up, very important, but brand sideways, brand down, those are the relationships that are going to endure over time and distance. And don't forget to pay attention to them too.
I recently heard Tory Burch be interviewed. I have the delight to know her. And when she first started the company, it was the Riva shoe. And she started it at her kitchen table. And then she got asked to go on Oprah. And that's really when she started to take off. And so somebody was doing a piece on her and they asked her, are you ambitious? And she said, no, I'm not ambitious at all. I'm da-da-da-da-da. And when the piece came out, one of her best friends called her and said, why are you ashamed to be ambitious? Being ambitious is an awesome thing. So one of the big brand tags that Tory has is, I am ambitious, be ambitious. And I think that's something important for women, all of us, to hear. And in terms of kind of self-promotion, while you can be ambitious, I think sharing it. Nominate a woman for one of the lists here in Pittsburgh. Share, host something for a woman. It's much more comfortable and authentic and real to promote yourself, which is fine, and your brand, if you're sharing it though, and you feel much better about it. And frankly, other women are more excited for your success if you're sharing. So I would say sharing whatever personal brand you have and helping other women have those. And I also want to say thank you. One of my grandmother's favorite quotes was an Egyptian poet, Hafez Ibrahim, who was a Nobel laureate. and he had a saying, when you educate a woman, you create a nation.
Mhm.
And I feel like sitting here with so many amazing women from Pittsburgh, we really are shaping this region. And this conference is really inspiring. It's inspiring to be with all of you. It's inspiring to be with this amazing passion. I don't even think Laura knows we live 2 blocks from Tree of Life in Squirrel Hill. And so Eradicate Hate is such an incredible and important organization. And I feel like we want to thank Ethan, but a huge round of applause for Lisa. Isn't she amazing? You are amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to our wonderful, wonderful panelists. I think you used the word, there's a little bit of magic, and it's true. Everyone in here, and I hope you feel the way I do, I feel blessed to be sitting here. I feel blessed to be able to have heard all of this wisdom and advice. And I would say also always learn, being somebody of a learning mind where you are always learning. So I am learning from these women, and I love that. And I love being able to share this space with all of you. And I realize now I'm holding this mic and this mic. But it's really is my pleasure to be here. So if we could give our panelists another round of applause. And I will say this also about social media. I do think that there are different types of social media, obviously. The one type of where you will find me on social media is on LinkedIn. And I think that is very important in terms of networking and connecting. So I do urge you, connect with each other, network. We have some time to do that. That's what this is all about, connecting in a very authentic and genuine and real way. And also, there is a special surprise. I can see Ethan nodding. That's why this was on my lap and I kept on dropping it like 5 times. But there is, if you look at your program booklet, go to this page. It's kind of towards the back, but you'll say create your own wine or spirits brand today. Speaking of branding, there is, if you have a little star, there's a little star here, a silver star. It means you won a bottle of Diva champagne. Appropriately, Ethan has one in the back, so look for the Diva champagne. And on that note, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon networking. Please enjoy. Thank you for coming. Oh my God.